I think there are a lot of players on the team this year that Florida State fans are super excited for, and with good reason. The Florida State's recruited a little bit better than they have in the past. They've got some more high-end, high-level talent. They've also done a really good job in the transfer portal and brought in guys like Marvin Jones Jr. and Malik Benson and others that I think have the fan base pretty pumped. But I do think there's a player on the team that a lot of fans are overlooking. A player that a lot of fans are not necessarily as excited as they probably should be for this upcoming 2024 season. I told you a week or two ago, we got a chance to sit down with Mike Norvell in a very private setting where there were just 2 or 3 people around kind of bouncing questions off of him. And the question got asked, it wasn't by me, you'll hear it in just a moment, but the question got asked about Jaylen Lucas. And I think Jaylen Lucas is a player that Mike Norvell is incredibly excited about. I think there are several reasons why, and I'm going to play you a couple of clips from that chat and then talk about it. But first, he was asked why Jaylen Lucas was the right fit.
The right fit for that room.
I mean, he was the right fit for our program. It wasn't necessarily just for the running back room, but I mean, you see, he's a dynamic playmaker. And last year we had a couple of really good guys. Trey Benson was one of the most explosive running backs in the country, and home run hitting capability. And then also looking in the return game with we've been pretty remarkable in our return game. Keon last year was the special teams player of the year in the ACC, and so we wanted to make sure that we had that type of dynamic player, and we feel like we got some really good young ones that are gonna have an opportunity to grow and develop and compete for that. But when Jaylen, that became.
So I like how Norvell corrects him and says that it's not just the fit for the room, but truly for the program. And he talks about his playmaking abilities, not just like Trey Benson in the backfield, kind of that explosive home run hitting capable running back, the guy who, if you don't get him in that first step or two, could be gone more often than not. But also somebody who can come in and make a massive difference in the return game. I think our team had so much talent last year and really in 2023 as well, that how good they were in the return game gets completely forgotten, right? You forget about the first, sellout in a long time with that 2023 game against Boston College. You forget about the way that game opened up, or how big that kickoff return for a touchdown was by Trey Benson. Maybe don't forget about the play, but since you won that game by 40, the significance maybe isn't there, right? You don't think about, the big plays in a 40-point game, right? You kind of have moved on. Well, I think that's kind of unfair because you had the first sellout doke in a while. You had an absolutely insane, electric night game atmosphere, and then it gets opened up and the top is literally blown off of Doak Campbell Stadium. You think about the Deuce Spann kick return for a touchdown against Duke when you were struggling and you could not get anything going, and he kind of gave you a jolt, a little bit of help to resurge the entire team and get you back into it. You think about Keon. He mentioned him winning Special Teams Player of the Year. You think about what he did. And as much as he was banged up, and as much as rivals want to say, he only caught this many passes against us, or he only caught this against us, this or that, he made the biggest play in both games with punt returns that changed the dynamic of the game and changed the field position of the game that were just huge. And, that gets overlooked, I think, because you end up going up 2 touchdowns. You end up going up 2 scores against Florida. Maybe you don't remember those specific plays, but Keon and this special teams unit was massive. And I don't think certain coaches put enough emphasis on special teams, but I think Norvell does. He talks about special teams. He didn't talk about offense. He didn't talk about defense in his opening press conference, the video that we did a couple of weeks ago. He talked about a team that was tough and physical and finished on special teams. And I think that's a big part of what Lucas brings. And that's why when he was asked about why Lucas was the right fit for this room, he said, whoa, it's not just the room. It's the team. It's the entire program. It's the emphasis that we have on special teams. And I do think that you're going to get a lot of Jaylen Lucas out of the backfield. I think you're going to get a lot of him catching the ball. And I think he's kind of the forgotten back there with Roydell and LT and Cam Davis and others. But as much as he's going to be a weapon in the passing game, the running game, I am so excited to see what he does on special teams. And I think that's what Norvell is really excited about as well. Now, before we go on, last week I told you about my friends over at the Mango Board. As a quick reminder, they are literally just trying to get the word out there about the best possible fruit that you can buy at your local grocer. If you don't believe me, you absolutely should. My kids go crazy for mangoes every time we get them weekly, and then we cannot keep them in the house. The Mango Board is also a proud supporter of FSU, so here's what I want you guys to do. You don't have to click on a link. You don't need to enter a code. You don't need to go buy anything off of a website. Just the next time you're at your local grocer, Publix, or wherever, grab a couple of mangoes. We're going to be giving some more mangoes away. June is National Mango Month. They've got a lot of good stuff going on over there. Appreciate them for their support of not only our channel, but FSU Athletics. And again, the next time you're at the grocery store, grab a couple of mangoes. All right. Now, what about the non-physical tools, the mentality? Coach Norvell had an answer about that as well.
I mean, he was definitely somebody that we sought after.
What about his kind of non-physical tools, the mentality?
Oh, I mean, he's got the right edge. I mean, he's, you talk about the fit. I mean, he fits us. I mean, he's got great work ethic, great, very determined. I mean, he has an edge. I mean, and it's every day he brings that, and but he's very supportive of his teammates, very supportive of the guys that are going through the process with him. And I mean, I just think he's been for the last 6 months of being here. I mean, he's just been incredible.
I love the fact that he brings this up and he talks about this. And, it's easy to say these things when we can't see him, or it's easy to say these things when we're not necessarily ever going to know. But we're going to know what Jaylen Lucas eventually looks like. We're eventually going to see him on the football field, hopefully for 14, 15, 16 games next year. But the toughness, the work. I think that when you think about this FSU football program and you think about where they're at right now, I think such a big part of it is that work mentality, that work mindset. And Coach Norvell, I should go through and count. We did that press conference video for you last week. But I think the number of times he used the word work in his opening press conference was probably around 15 or 20 times. It was in everything he did, and it was in everything he said. And since then, 4.5 years later, it is the most evident part of his program. And they don't get guys who aren't going to come in here and bust it. They don't get guys who aren't going to come in here and work. You see sometimes rivals lollygagging, whether it's in a practice clip or it's in a clip that comes out of a spring game or a game that they're kind of getting their butts handed to them and they're just kind of like, whatever. That never happens at Florida State, at least not under Mike Norvell. Did it happen other times? Sure. But they demand and they put a certain standard on everything that they do. Norvell opened his press conference. Again, I keep going back to that video because it was so impactful. He opens his press conference saying, how you do anything is how you do everything. And he has stayed true to that. And when they go out and get guys, that is what they're looking for. And it has been so evident with this program. There's a toughness. There's a degree of finishing. It's almost like you're not going to be here. I think about Mickey Andrews at times. You're not going to be here unless you are just mean and relentless on the football field. You are not going to be here unless you are willing to outwork everyone else in the locker room and then everybody else on the other side of the field as well. Lastly, we'll wrap up with this. He was asked about the relationship with Ja'Kai, his brother, helping with that transition. And I really liked his answer here. We'll talk about it and then we'll get out.
Kind of with his brother, and how do you think that helps him and Ja'Kai?
Yeah, it's special. I mean, those two. I mean, I think Ja'Kai has helped Jaylen transition in. Just of understanding expectations. Kind of even being able to explain the why rather than it just having to come from a coach. I mean, when you have that mentor that's here, and especially when it's your family, it definitely accelerates the process. But excited for both those guys, and they're both very competitive, and they want to beat each other in everything that they're doing. So I think it's definitely a good push for Ja'Kai and for Jaylen.
This was not something I had thought about. This is not something, I mean, you hear like, oh, well, he's transferring his brother. You know, you hear about familial ties and how that can help in recruiting. And we think about it all the time. Oh, this recruit is going to come to us because his sister goes here, or because his dad went here, or because his mom went here. I don't think we think about what that does for them past the actual commitment, right? We think about legacy recruits and how much that helps get them. We don't necessarily think about what it does for them once they get there. Now, if you had a mom that played a sport 40 years ago and now you're at school, I don't know how much of an impact that has, but having a brother on the team, having somebody you're incredibly close with, for several reasons, and Mike Norvell laid them out, right? The just processing stuff a little bit quicker, knowing and understanding expectations a little bit quicker, having somebody that you trust, and I think everybody who signs up to play for any college coach trusts them to some degree, but having somebody that you sincerely trust, right? Like somebody who has had your back for the last 2 decades, right? Somebody who you are buddies with, not just a coach, an authority figure, somebody who's been here, right? You remember Ja'Kai was making plays back in 2021. Somebody who has been here and been through the fire and been through the ringer and suffered injuries and made massive plays against Notre Dame and Miami and others, made massive plays against Pittsburgh last year when the offense was struggling and you were down a couple of wide receivers. Having somebody like that you can lean on from a knowledge perspective, from an expectation perspective, from a motivation perspective. Listen, everybody in that locker room wants to beat everybody else every single play. That's just how these guys are. You're not a Division I athlete if you're not competitive. But nothing is more competitive than your Division I brother athlete, right? Like you're never going to be pushed harder than by him. And similar skill sets, similar positions, they're running routes at the same time. That's a massive advantage for Jaylen Lucas. And again, I don't necessarily want to call him the forgotten running back or the forgotten weapon or the gadget back or the guy who's going to sneak his way into having a really good year or anything like that. I think he's a super talented kid who is going to do really special things for Florida State. His speed is absolutely off the charts and probably what most of you are excited about. I get that. But if I could have shown you guys how much Mike Norvell's face lit up and the smile that he had, hopefully it came through in that clip, but the smile that he had from ear to ear when he was talking about Jaylen Lucas. And to be very fair, Mike Norvell does that when he talks about a lot of his players. It's not a Jaylen Lucas only thing. I'm not telling you that he's more excited for Jaylen than anyone else on the roster. I do think there's a large part of this fan base who, for whatever reason, doesn't remember every single player, and you can't be excited about 85 different guys, and that's fine, but is largely not focused on Jaylen. Who's the number one wide receiver? Is it Benson? Can Kentron step up? Will Hakeem be there? Oh man, the injury to Hill. All these things. Who's the tight end? There's a lot of questions. Running back room. I hear people all the time talk about Cam Davis. I hear people talk about Lawrence Toafili. I hear people talk about Roy Dale Williams. Very rarely is it really Ja'Kai or Jaylen. I think both are going to have big years for the Noles. I think both will be incredibly reliable, incredibly dependable. And I think you'll look back at this year and hopefully, I won't do it too bad, but hopefully I'll take a pretty big victory lap on this and say, yeah, not necessarily me, but I told you that Coach Norvell said this. I told you that this is what was coming. Let me know your thoughts. Give me maybe a player, if it's not Jaylen Lucas, that you're really excited about this year, who you think is under the radar. You're not allowed to say Pat Payton. You're not allowed to say Josh Farmer. You're not allowed to say DJ Uiagalelei. We're all excited about those guys, but maybe an under-the-radar guy. If it's not Jaylen Lucas, if it wasn't before this video, maybe it is now. Hey, I referenced that Mike Norvell press conference that we got into and we broke down and we went through the things that he said, the promises he made 4.5 years ago. If you missed that video, it's probably one of my favorite videos I've ever done on this channel. You need to take a few minutes right now and watch it. You can do that by clicking on the screen right now.